Good day, class! Welcome to General Biology 2, where we learn something new about the lives on Earth. Before we start, let me introduce our group. We are the Group K, or Group KABOGERA, and we are ready to present our lesson for this day. Our group consists of 4 members, namely Mikka, Sheena, me, Melanie, and Juenja. And we are from the section of STEM 11U. So our lesson 2 for week 4 is the processes in plants and animals, sensory and motor mechanism. This lesson is gonna be fun, and we will ensure that you will be full of knowledge after this lesson. So, let us read first the objectives. At the end of this lesson, the learners will be able to explain the sensory and motor mechanisms of plants and animals, describe neurons and identify its type and their functions, identify the types of stimuli, describe and enumerate the sensory receptor cells, identify and describe the 5 sensory organs, and explain how the 5 sensory organs receive and process information. Sensory processing involves all central actions of information processing which connect the initial stages of sensory reception with the development of subjective sensory perception. Animals typically respond only to stimuli that they choose. They filter out those stimuli that surround them and react to those that they chose to embrace. Animals can respond to environmental factors by moving to a new location, just like humans. Plants, however, are rooted in location and must adopt the environmental conditions. Plants have specialized mechanisms for sensing and responding to light, gravity, temperature, and physical contact. Receptors sense environmental factors and relay information to effector systems, often by intermediate chemical messengers, to provide plant reactions. Plant responses to light. Plants have a range of advanced light applications that go way beyond their ability to photosynthesize low molecular weight sugars by using only carbon dioxide, light, and water. In reaction to light, photomorphogenesis is the growth and development of plants. It enables plants to maximize their use of light and space. Photoperiodism is the tendency to use light to maintain track of time. Plants can tell the time of day and time of year by detecting and using different wavelengths of sunlight. Amazing, right? While phototropism is a directional reaction that encourages plants to grow towards or even away from light. So, the plant responds to light in various ways. Through photoperiodism, plants uses light to maintain the track of time, day, and year. By detecting and using the different wavelengths of light, imagine, they do not use clocks or calendars, but they are aware about time. Positive phototropism is growth towards a light source, while negative phototropism, also known as scototropism, is growth away from light. Phototropins are protein-based receptors that are responsible for mediating the phototropic reaction. As all plant photoreceptors, phototropins are made up of a protein component and a light-absorbing portion called chromophore. In phototropins, the chromophore is covalently bound flavin molecule. Thus, phototropins belong to a family of proteins called flavoproteins. Let us watch this short video to understand further. We can clearly see through the video that as time passes by, plants move slowly directly to where there is much more light. Plants needed light, and so they move through where light is. Plants are constantly reacting to various stimuli that are affecting them. Also, you can notice that there are trees that bends over. It is because they go to the side or the direction where there is light. In simple words, phototropism is just plants' reaction where they grow directionally towards sunlight. Plants' responses to gravity. Whether or not they germinate in the sun or in complete darkness, shoots typically sprout from the ground, and roots grow back to the ground. A plant put on its side in the dark sends shoots upward when enough time is given. Gravitropism means that the roots expand into the soil and that the shoots grow into sunshine. Here is a short video clip to show what is gravitropism. Alright, so gravity basically affects the ecology and evolution of every living organism. As what we saw on the video, gravitropism is the reason why the roots grow down partially. Roots respond positively, growing down into the soil, while their stems respond negatively, growing upward to reach the sunlight. Growing off the apical tip upward is called negative gravitropism, while development of the roots downward is called positive gravitropism. Just remember that upward is negative and downward is positive. So, why does this happen? It is simply because plants respond to gravity. It is like plants have their own sense that they need to grow downwards, and gravity is behind that. Plants' responses to wind and touch. The shoot of the pea plants winds along the trellis, while the tree rises at an angle in response to powerful prevailing winds. They are examples of how plants respond to contact or wind. The movement of a plant subjected to constant directional pressure is called thigmotropism. The Greek term thigma means contact, and tropism means direction. Tendrils are one example of this. So, if you don't know what tendrils is, do you know bitter gourd or ampalaya? It has tendrils. The meristematic area of the tendrils are very sensitive to the touch. The light touch evokes a rapid coiling reaction. the cells in contact with the support surface contract, while the cells on the opposite side of the support extend. The application of guzmanic acid is necessary to activate a tensile coil without a mechanical stimulus. A thigmonastic response is a touch response independent of the direction of stimulus. For example, in the Venus flytrap, two modified leaves are joined at a hinge and lined with thin fork-like tines along the outer edges. Tiny hairs are located inside the trap. When an insect brushes against these trigger hairs, touching two or more of them in succession, the leaves close quickly, trapping the prey. Glands on the leaf surface secrete enzymes that slowly digest the insect. The released nutrients are absorbed by the leaves, which reopen for the next meal. Thigmomorphogenesis is a slow developmental change in the shape of a plant subjected to continuous mechanical stress. Let us watch this short video clip that represents and shows the plant responses to wind and touch. So basically, Thigmotropism, it is a plant reaction to being touched. Another example of this is the Mimosa pudica. So have you already seen a Mimosa pudica plant or simply Makahiya plant? You can notice that if you touch that plant, the leaves will close. It reacts when it is being touched. That is Thigmotropism. Plants respond to wind and touch by hanging their direction of growth, movement, and shape. So, as what I have read a few moments ago, thigmomorphogenesis is the slow developmental changes due to continuous mechanical stress. For instance, you may notice a tree bend in the wind. The growth of the tree is usually stunted and the trunk thickens and it strengthens tissues of the plants, especially the xylem. So, to sum up all the ideas, let us have a short summary about the responses of plants in different factors. So basically, tropisms are plants' reaction to external factors. A tropism is a biological movement indicating growth or turning movement of a biological organism, usually a plant, in response to an environmental stimulus. In tropisms, this response is dependent on the direction of the stimulus. Phototropism are plants' reaction where they grow directionally towards sunlight. Gravitropism is where the plant responds to gravity and the roots of the plants goes downward while the stems of the plants grows upward. Thigmotropism is the plant's reaction by being touched, and thigmomorphogenesis is the slow developmental change due to continuous mechanical stress.
Sensory and motor mechanisms in animals. Sensory processing involves all central actions of information processing, which connect the initial stages of sensory reception with the development of subjective sensory perception. Like humans, animals also have sensory systems. It allows animals to see, hear, smell, taste, and feel. These are responsible for the stimuli received by the animals from their environment. It sends the stimuli to the nervous system to process the information. After that, the animals will be able to react and respond. Animals typically respond only to stimuli that they choose. They filter out those stimuli that surround them and react to those that they chose to embrace. This means that after sensing the environment, animals will only react to one stimuli. The detection and processing of sensory information and the generation of motor output provide the physiological basis for all animal behavior. Sense organs are essential for animals to be aware for their environment. It also contributes to their behavior. The brain's processing of sensory input and motor output is cyclical rather than linear. The basic neuron types. The nervous system is like a giant communication system that extends to all different parts of the body. It is composed of somatic or central nervous system, peripheral nervous system, and autonomic nervous system. The main parts are the brain, spinal cord, sensory organs, and neurons. The neurons are also called nerve cells. It is the basic unit of structure in the nervous system. Neurons come in a variety of shapes. For example, a single sensory neuron in your fingertip has an axon that stretches the length of your arm, whereas the neuron in your brain can only stretch a few millimeters. They also have different shapes based on their purpose. Motor neurons that regulate muscle contractions have a cell body on one end, a long axon in the center, and dendrites on the other. Sensory neurons have dendrites on both sides, connected by a long axon with a cell body in the center. While interneurons or associative neurons hold information between motor neurons and sensory neurons. The core members of the nervous system often differ in functions. Sensory nerves bear impulses from the outer areas of the body, or periphery, to the central nervous system. This type of neuron is the one that receives electrical signals from the outer body parts and delivers it to the central nervous system. Motor nerves or motor neurons carry impulses from the central nervous system to the outer parts of the body, like muscles, skin, and glands. This type of neuron is the one that carries signals from the central nervous system and delivers it to the outer body parts. Interneurons connect separate neurons within the brain and spinal cord. Well, this type of neuron is the one that serves as a connection of neurons. It's like a bridge. The simplest form of neural pathway is a monosynaptic or single connection reflex pathway, like a knee-jerk reflex. When the doctor taps the right spot on the knee with a rubber hammer, the nerves give a signal to the spinal cord from a sensory nerve. The sensory neuron sends a warning to the motor neuron that regulates the muscles of your body. Nerve impulses pass down the motor neuron and stimulate the muscle of the leg to contract. The reaction is a muscular irritation that happens instantly and doesn't affect the brain. Humans have a lot of hardwired reflexes like this, but as tasks become more difficult, the pathway circuitry becomes more complicated and the brain gets involved. Types of stimuli. Stimuli are the things that trigger our reactions. Stimuli can be of many types. Visual, or what the animal sees. Auditory, or what the animal hears. Tactile, or what the animal feels. Chemical, or what the animal smells or tastes. Sensory receptor cells can be specialized neurons, or the receptor cell is also a neuron. Specialized sensory cells which synapse with a neuron. The receptor cell secretes neurotransmitters to stimulate changes in membrane potential in the synapse neuron. Different sensory receptor cells are specialized for different types of stimuli and are categorized by the type, by the type of stimulus they detect. Sensory receptor cells include but are not limited to. Here are some examples of sensory receptor cells. Mechanoreceptors respond to physical deformation of the cell membrane from mechanical energy or pressure, including touch, stretch, motion, or sound. These are the receptors that react to mechanical stress or strain. Chemoreceptors or chemoreceptors respond to specific molecules often dissolved in a specific medium such as saliva or mucus or airborne molecules. These are the receptors that react to chemical stimuli. Photoreceptors respond to radiant energy or the visible light in most vertebrates, visible as well as UV light in many insects. These are the receptors that react to visible light. Nociceptors respond to noxious stimuli, or essentially anything that causes tissue damage. These are the receptors that react to damage or threat. Thermoreceptors respond to heat or cold. These are the receptors that react to temperature. Humans and many other vertebrates have at least 5 special senses: olfaction or smell, gustation or taste, equilibrium or balance and body position, vision, and hearing. Additionally, we possess general senses, also called somatosensation, which respond to stimuli like temperature, pain, pressure, and vibration.
For the next discussion is how the human body receives sensory information. The nervous system must receive and process information about the outside world in order to respond, interact, and keep the body stable and safe. Most of this input comes from the sensory organs, the eyes, ears, nose, mouth, and skin. These 5 senses are used to interpret the world around us as we can find out, grasp, or whatever's happening around us. Moreover, the eyes is for sense of sight, tongue is for sense of taste, ear is for sense of sound, skin is for sense of touch, and nose is for sense of smell. In addition to that, about how the human body receives sensory information, specialized cells and tissues inside these organs receive raw inputs and convert them into signals that the nervous system can use. Nerves send impulses to the brain, which interprets them as sight or vision, sound or hearing, scent, olfaction, taste, tasting, and touch or tactile perception. Now, let's move on to the first sensory organ that we are going to discuss, which is the eye. The eyes are in the orbits of the brain protected by bone and fat. The sclera is the white portion of the skin. It preserves internal structures and surrounds a circular portal shaped by cornea, iris, and pupil. The cornea is translucent enough that the light can reach the eye and curve so that it can be focused into the pupil behind it. Currently, the pupil is a hole in the colored disc of the iris. The pupil undergoes the process of which allow us to perceive images. The pupil also opens and closes to control the amount of light that is allowed to enter the eye. From the outside of the eye, light passes through the clear lens, then through the pupil. The iris dilates or constricts, changing how much light travels through the pupil and through the lens. The bent lens then focuses the vision on the retina, the inner layer of the body. The retina is a delicate membrane of nervous tissue that includes photoreceptor cells. These cells, rod and cones, convert light into nervous signals. The optic nerve. Optic nerve take messages from the eye to the brain. As we can see in the picture or in the GIF, this is the process on how we receive messages using our eyes. The extraocular muscles. The extraocular muscles execute eye movements and are innervated by 3 cranial nerves. The muscles are attached to the sclera of the eye at one end and are anchored to the bony orbit of the eye at their opposite ends. Contraction of the muscles produce movement of the eyes within the orbit. The cranial lower motor neurons innervate these muscles and thereby control their contractions. Next is the ear. The ear is the main sensory organ of the auditory system. Music, laughter, car horns, all the ears like sound waves in the air. Our ears have 3 sections, and these are inner ear, middle ear, and outer ear. As we can see in the picture, the outer ear is the brown part, the middle ear is the pink, and lastly the blue part is the inner ear. The inner ear is made up of the cochlea, the auditory nerve, and the brain. The middle ear consists of the middle ear bones called the ossicles. The ossicles consist of malleus, incus, and stapes. The outer ear includes the pinna, the ear canal, and the eardrum. These sections have a role to allow us to hear. The outer ear. The outer ear is the external portion of the ear. It sends vibrations down the ear canal, the outer ear acoustic meatus, to the tympanic membrane, the eardrum. The sound waves beat the tympanic membrane, producing mechanical vibrations in the membrane. The tympanic membrane passes these impulses to 3 small bones known as the auditory ossicles, which are located in the air-filled middle ear cavity. These bones, the malleus, the incus, and the stapes, bear the vibration and knock into the opening of the inner ear. The inner ear. The inner ear consists of fluid tubes with a spiral-shaped cochlea. The function of the cochlea is to transform mechanical sound waves into electrical or neutral signals for use in the brain. Specialized hair cells in the cochlea send shock waves in the fluid as the ossicles pound forward. They stimulate nervous receptors, transmitting signals to the brain via the cochlear nerve, which interprets signals as sound. To summarize the discussion, the human body receives sensory information with the help of our 5 senses, which are the nose, eyes, ears, skin, and tongue. About the eyes are in the orbits of the brain protected by bone and fat. The white portion of the skin in the eye is called sclera. The transparent part of the eye that covers the iris and the pupil and allows the light to enter the inside is called the cornea. The pupil is the hole in the colored disc of the iris. On the other hand, the iris is the colored tissue at the front of the eye that contains the pupil in the center. And the retina is the light-sensitive layers of nerve tissue at the back of the eye that receive images and sends them as electrical signals through the optic nerve to the brain. The role of the optic nerve is takes messages from the eye to the brain. And lastly is the extraocular muscles. The role of this is to execute eye movements. In the ear part, it have 3 sections, which are the inner ear, middle ear, and the outer ear. The outer ear is the external portion of the ear. It consists the pinna, the ear canal, and the eardrum. About the middle ear, it consists the middle ear bones, which is called the auditory ossicles. The auditory ossicles consist of malleus, incus, stapes. The middle ear is located in the air-filled middle ear cavity. The malleus and incus and stapes, the role of this is to bear the vibrations and knock into the opening of the inner ear. And the last part is the inner ear consists of fluid-filled tubes with a spiral-shaped cochlea. It is made up of cochlea and the auditory nerve and the brain.
The skin is made up of 3 main tissue layers: the outer epidermis, the middle dermis, and the inner hypodermis. These specialized receptor cells within these layers sense touch stimuli and send signals through peripheral nerves to the brain. These receptors are small in size, but they collect very accurate information when touched. They may sense pain, temperature, friction, and stretch. Unique receptors respond to each kind of information. This helps to provide the body with a full picture of what's touching the skin. The presence and placement of various forms of receptors make some areas of the body more sensitive. Merkel cells, for example, are located in the lower epidermis of the lips, shoulders, and external genitals. Meissner corpuscles are located in the upper dermis of the hairless skins, like fingertips, nipples, and soles of the feet. All of these receptors are detected by touch, pressure, and vibrations. The skin can convey many sensations such as biting cold of a wind, the comfortable pressure of hand holding yours, or the irritating edge of a woolen scarf. The different types of information activate a specific receptor that convert the stimulation of the skin to electrical nerve impulses. The process called transduction. There are three main groups of receptors in our skin. First is the thermoreceptors, or the sense of temperature. They do this by changing their level of activity. For example, if the temperature becomes colder, thermoreceptors that senses cold will be more active than the thermoreceptors that senses hot. Second is the nociceptors, or the sense of pain, but not the pain in the way a person normally thinks about it. We think of different pain related to a cut or a burn, but nociceptors can tell one from the other. They can only detect damage to skin cells. So while a person might think about pain as being different for a brain versus a cut, nociceptors get similar information in both cases. Last is the mechanoreceptors, or the sense of contact with the skin. These receptors are mechanical, which means they feel physical change. The change could be when an object presses firmly or just brushes against the skin. The nose. Do you know that the sense of smell is called olfaction? It begins with its specialized nerve receptors found on hair-like cilia in the epithelium at the top of nasal cavity. When we sniff or inhale from the nose, some of the molecules in the air bind to these receptors. This activates a signal that passes up the nerve fiber to the epithelium and the skull bone above, to the olfactory bulb. Olfactory bulb is a rounded mass of tissue that contains several types of nerve cells that are involved in the sense of smell. Olfactory bulbs contain neuron cells bodies and transmit information along the cranial nerves, which are extensions of the olfactory bulbs. They transmit a signal down to the olfactory nerves to the olfactory region of the cerebral cortex. Do you also know that sneezing is a synchronized respiratory defense reflex that occurs as a result of stimulation of the upper respiratory tract, especially the nasal cavity? The tongue. I think you're wondering what are the little bumps on the top of your tongue. It's called papillae. Papillae are the tiny raised protrusions on the tongue that contain taste buds. Papillae are the little bumps on the top of your tongue that help grip food while your teeth are chewing. It has four types: filiform, fungiform, foliate, and syncophilate. Except for the filiform, these papillae allow us to differentiate between sweet, salty, bitter, and savory flavors. Many of them, including syncophilate papillae and fungiform papillae, contain taste buds. When we eat, food additive penetrate the papillae and hit the taste buds. This chemical or tasting activates specialized taste cells within the taste buds, stimulating nerve receptors. The receptors transmit signal to the nasal, glossopharyngeal, and vagus nerve fibers. The nerves carry the impulses to the medulla oblongata, which transmit them to the thalamus and the cortex of the brain. And that is how sensory and motor mechanism works in our body. We hope that you learned something from our presentation.